Welcome back to the channel, everybody. So guys, if you're watching this video, you either did one of two things. You either pulled Duedan the Ruinc recently, or you're trying to decide if this champion is worth your 40 ancient shards for the guaranteed event for this champion, which is live the day of this video, going live also. So first things first, I want to make it short and sweet. This champion's awesome, but he's awesome for one specific area. Okay, I'm not going to go super in depth in everything. This is a test server, so I haven't had like an extensive playthrough of this champion, but the one area that I know for sure he shines very well in, I think he more than excels for the specific role. Now, if you're late game, if you're way in game, you already have teams built for Hydra, then he may not do that much for you. But as far as a champion who can bring some amazing benefits to your Hydra team, I would say this guy is definitely a 5 for Hydra. He brings some very good synergy. Now, as far as the dungeons go, I'd say he's not going to be used if you are somebody who is looking for speed runs. Now, if you're somebody who's looking to get through the dungeon, this guy can be amazing. If you're having a hard time surviving through the waves, this guy's going to bring a buff extension on the A2 ability. So attacks all enemies, places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, equal to 15% of this champion's max HP. He is an HP-based champion. He has pretty good base HP at that. So having a 15% shield on all allies, plus the increases the duration of all ally buffs on all allies by 1 turn, is very, very good. So you have a shield plus that increased duration of buffs, so extending the increased defenses, strengthens, whatever you may have on your team, it's going to help you get through the waves. So if you're trying to do that, it's going to be a good champion. Faction Wars, it's going to be a good champion, of course. But I don't think he's going to be very, conducive to speed runs, okay? So keep that in mind. Now his A3 ability places a taunt buff on this champion for 1 turn. Also places a 25% strengthen buff and a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. So if you're reading through this ability, well, I just read it, so you don't have to read it, but he's placing 3 buffs on himself, okay? That's amazing in and of itself for one specific role, and that is being a mischief tank for Hydra, because the mischief head of the Hydra targets the champion with the most buffs, and he's placing 3 on himself. So he's going to have a very high chance of being targeted by the head of mischief. But even better than that, you'll notice when fully booked, which I do suggest booking this champion, it takes 10 epic books, specifically on the A2 ability, the A3 ability. The A2 ability maybe doesn't really matter as much. The A1 ability I'd say is very important. But once you get this ability booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, you're placing a 2-turn counterattack and strengthen. Taunt can't be extended, but the strengthen and counterattack can be extended, meaning they're going to be up for 2 turns. This is a 3-turn cooldown, but then right after using this A3 ability, you're going to go into using the A2 ability, which is going to extend the duration of all your buffs by 1 turn, meaning this 2-turn counterattack and strengthen, assuming your masteries didn't extend the duration or anything, you're now sitting at 3-turn duration. So once you come back around to this ability being off cooldown, you can recast it and then go into the A2 ability once more. So if you're following along, this champion can basically keep up counterattack and strengthen 100% of the time. So you're going to have 2 buffs 100% of the time that nobody else on your team for Hydra has. So your likelihood of being targeted by the head of mischief is extremely high. So when it comes to building this champion, let's talk about his artifacts. So if you're going to build him for a mischief tank, the reflex set that I have on him, not necessarily needed. So if you're going to build him for a mischief tank, you're going to want to see how much accuracy, how much resistance you actually need. Well, not accuracy. Accuracy is not needed. You want to see how much accuracy the head you're trying to resist actually has, okay? So in this case, we're doing hard. We're just going to compare it to hard. So the head of mischief, I'll leave this link down below. This whole sheet, you just click this little bottom tab right here, Hydra Stats by Bobo, and you can see all this stuff. But you can see that the head of mischief on hard has 310 accuracy. In order to resist that, you're going to need 415 resistance. Now, that's quite a bit of resistance, but if you bring a decreased accuracy champion, you're going to need about half that. So for my build, I have good HP, good defense, good speed, good resistance, enough resistance to actually resist the head of mischief. So if you're doing normal, it's going to be a lot less resistance needed. If you're going to do a nightmare, it's going to be a little bit more resistance needed. But you guys can plug in the stats as you see fit and get the numbers you need. Accuracy, don't need anything at all. Speed, 203 is perfectly fine, but honestly, he could be faster and it'd be perfectly fine as well because his A1 is actually incredible. And we'll go over that in just 1 second. But his HP, I would try to get that as high as you can. HP is very important, but I would also try to get defense at a good spot. Ideally, 3,200 would be a good spot, but 2,760, 2,700 has been fine for me. So keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're bringing a champion with increased defense, you don't need as much defense. Definitely stack some good HP on this champion, because remember that A2 ability does scale off of your HP. So it gives a shield based on 15% of your HP. So we went through his A2 and his A3. They're amazing. They're great together. But then you see his A1 ability. So remember, he's keeping his counterattack up all the time, meaning he's a mischief tank. But he also has his A1 ability that attacks one enemy, a 60% chance when fully booked of removing one random debuff from all allies. This is kind of like a lesser version of Doom Priest, because Doom Priest is a guaranteed every turn. But in that sense, it's a lesser version. But it's in a way a better version, because he has counterattack. So every time the Hydra is doing an AoE ability, he's counterattacking. Anytime any boss or any minion, whatever you're going against, is doing an AoE attack or targeting this champion, he's doing a counterattack. He's using that A1 ability, and he's having a chance to remove one random debuff from all allies. So you guys remember the Head of Torment on Hydra? Well, that head that puts out True Fear, if you don't have Shamel, it's pretty difficult. But now, this guy has a pretty good chance to remove the True Fears pretty frequently, to be honest. I'll show you guys the run that I did earlier, and you guys can watch throughout the run and see how well he actually performed. But let's talk about his masteries, okay? Before we get into actually showcasing him, his masteries, this is what I have set up. We have Solidarity for some extra resistance, because like I said, he places 3 buffs on himself. We'll talk about Taunt in just a few minutes. Taunt's a little bit weird, to be honest, especially for Hydra. But these 3 extra buffs means extra 15 resistance. Definitely not bad. We also have some Deterrence, chance to counterattack, some Retribution, which doesn't activate that much. And then we have typical support masteries for typical support and defense masteries, honestly, for a champion who does not need accuracy and also has shields or heals. So this is a pretty common setup in general. We do have lasting gifts to extend the duration of the counterattack as well as the strengthen. The taunt cannot be extended. Now, as far as the defense, as far as the tier 6 mastery goes, I have Bulwark. You can go Bulwark, you can go Unshakable, depending on how much resistance you need and how much you actually have. But as far as the other masteries, I don't see a lot of value in them. Offense, I tried doing War Master, but to be honest, his A1 ability, single target, not really that crazy. He doesn't do a lot of damage, so you're not going to build him for damage. The War Master hits are nice, but I think there's a lot more benefit to bringing a champion like this to just soak some more damage. Speaking of soaking the damage, that's going to be where we're talking about the actual gear sets you're using. I'm using Reflex. I was trying it out. It's not necessarily the best build, but you can definitely use things like Guardian, things like Immortal, Regeneration, Bolster. Anything that's going to continuously heal this champion is definitely going to lend itself well to be paired with Bulwark, because he has really no other heal. So if you have Bulwark, he's going to be taking damage, and you want to recover the damage you're taking. So having some Immortal, Regeneration, Guardian, Bolster, anything like that is going to be very solid. But to be honest, you could just use broken sets. It doesn't really matter. Make sure the stats are there. And if you have a set that makes sense, go ahead and use it. So let's go ahead and jump into, I'll just talk about all the areas real quick. Campaign, he's not going to matter. Dungeons, he's going to do good. He's going to make your team sustain, survive longer, and he's going to perform well. He's going to do his job, but it's not going to lend itself to speed runs. It's just going to lend itself to surviving. I'm not even going to showcase this because I don't think it's really needed. Hydra should explain all you guys need to know. As far as Faction Wars go, we got like several months before this actually comes out. So I wouldn't stress about that too much. It doesn't really matter. He's going to be great. He's going to work amazing in Faction Wars, of course. We have some really good Faction War champions for the Sylvan Watchers already. But if you want to go for him, build him just for Faction Wars, he's going to be amazing. He's going to work amazing in Faction Wars with just your Hydra build. As far as the arena goes, he doesn't necessarily bring anything amazing for the arena. Possibly Taunt, but we'll get into that a little bit more once we get into the Hydra match, why it's not really going to be that important. Doom Tower, nothing great. Very similar to the dungeon setup. He's going to perform decent, but not for speedruns, okay? Sustainability, he can do it. Speedruns, not really his thing. Let's go ahead and jump in Hydra. I'll show you guys the team I was using. I'm going to do this on hard. It can work on brutal as well, but it's a little bit more difficult to actually cycle through the heads. So we're going to use this team, okay? This is going to be Necmo, Kantra, Husk, Duedan, Geomancer, and Ugo. I actually ran this team earlier, and fast forwarding it, 44.63 million damage, which is pretty impressive, okay? But I'm going to show you guys the initial setup of this match, show you how it actually works. As far as the presets go, I'll click through everything in case you're curious. Like I said, this is the test server. I can just turn this off and use this on Husk. It is pretty important. We'll hit Duedan. I have him opening with his A3 ability and then prioritizing his A2, because I want him to extend the buffs. And this is a good order because he's going to open up, which is very, very important. Okay, make sure he's opening or prioritizing the A3 because you want the counterattack and strengthen first before using the A2 ability, so you have those up to actually extend them. Keep that in mind. Geomancer, typical stuff, and then Ugo, okay? The main person we're going to be talking about is Duedan. So remember, his main purposes in this team are Mischief Tank and debuff removal. He does both those jobs very, very impressively, to be honest, okay? So we'll go ahead and turn on full auto. This team is 100% full auto. I'm actually going to hide my webcam so you guys can see what's going on with Ugo. But the main thing here, actually, I'm going to have to reset this because I need a provoke to go off on the Head of Decay over there, or the run's just going to fail every time. I do have a provoke set on Necmo, and once the run actually gets started, it's going to be perfectly fine. All right, let's see if Necmo lands the provoke here in this fight. Boom. Oh, there we go. We have a provoke. Now Cantra's off, and the team can run on full auto. So with these initial heads, it's a test server once again. These initial heads don't really do that much to show the potential of our dude Duedan over here. Now, whenever the heads start placing debuffs, so the poison one, they can show a little bit of nice things. Okay, right here is actually a pretty good example. See, right there, you can actually see that Ugo and Husk both got the provoke cleansed from them, which I'd say is pretty crazy. So as we continue through the champions, if Duedan gets hit, he'll counterattack with that A1 ability, or just cleanse from Geomancer, which is going to be pretty friggin' awesome, okay? So obviously, if you do this in manual, you can make him cleanse or have a chance to whenever you want. So like right here, for example, I could just use the A1 ability, have a chance to cleanse Geomancer, and boom. Now Geomancer, if he actually had that A3 ability off cooldown, could be placing an HP burn this turn instead of waiting until next turn. I'd say that's very, very impactful. Very impactful. So now Duedan's coming back around. Hopefully we get a provoke off on that head on the far left, the decay, which we should with Cantra. Should be no problem, hopefully. There we go, we got off. But here, now, anytime a debuff lands, I'm hoping it actually does so we can see how it works. But I was going against the Head of Torment, the Fear Head, the one that's super annoying with those True Fears, and he was keeping them cleared off surprisingly well. Not once was he not targeted by the Head of Mischief. Every time the Head of Mischief went to steal a debuff, or went to steal a buff, Duedan was the one being targeted. Only one time did the Head of Mischief that I noticed actually steal the buffs from Duedan, which made a significant difference because remember, the Head of Mischief not only steals your buffs, but also steals 50% of your turn meter. Now, let's talk about this Taunt buff, okay? So Taunt is nice because it's sitting there and it's bringing an extra buff for Head of Mischief to prioritize targeting. The only downside is, in general content, it doesn't really do that much, okay? So it makes enemies have to use their abilities on the champion with Taunt, meaning if they use their A1 ability and it's a single target, it has to be targeted at Duedan. But if they have an AoE ability, if they have a strip, if they have a cleanse, if they have a heal, whatever it is, they can use any ability. They can even use an A1 or an AoE ability, but it has to be targeting this champion. So it's a little bit weird. It's far less than Provoke. Provoke is far better than Taunt. And the other downside is any Hydra head. So you have Head of Decay, which targets the champion with, let's see, attacks a champion with the lowest HP, places 100% heal reduction. So that's just going to ignore Taunt. Not going to matter. It's going to target the champion with the lowest HP. It's going to go right past that. No issue whatsoever. Same thing with Head of Mischief. It's going to target the champion with the most buffs. It's not going to care about this little Taunt buff that's currently placed on Duedan. So Taunt doesn't really bring that much, in my opinion. I'm not really sure if it's going to have use down the road. Maybe there's a new Hydra head that comes out. Maybe it has some good use against that. But currently, not really anything crazy, to be honest. I even tried it out in PvP with the other legendary champion who has the Taunt buff. And once again, didn't really do that much, unfortunately. I was really hoping it was going to be a really good buff, but it just doesn't seem that way. But you can see, he's had counterattack up this entire fight. I really hope the Head of Torment, the Head of Mischief, one of those two pop up and spawn in just a second. I think that'd be an excellent thing for you guys to see. But check this out. Boom. We're cleansing so many debuffs. Look at all those debuffs cleansed, okay? So every time he does that, he has a 60% chance per champion to cleanse those debuffs. I've seen him cleanse 2 debuffs, and I've seen him cleanse 5 debuffs. These other 2 heads are about to pop up with something else. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully it's going to be the Head of Mischief or the Head of Torment, which sounds weird because those are typically the heads I'm not looking forward to seeing whatsoever. but I want to see it here so you guys can actually see how good this champion actually is for Hydra. If you're looking for a Hydra Mischief Tank, if you're looking for a good cleanser as well, he actually is surprisingly good at both of those. The Mischief Tank is kind of obvious because his setup's perfect, but cleansing was surprisingly impressive. Okay, here we go. Mischief should only be targeting him. And remember, this is full auto, so no manual intervention whatsoever. We don't have very many buffs on this team, so as far as like the actual gearing, since we have reflex on him, if we would bring champions like Sifi, champions like Duchess, champions like Rector Drath, Krisk, any champion who actually brings some other buffs, his A2 ability and his reflex gear would be far more impactful than what it is right now. There we go. The Head of Mischief targeted him, didn't steal anything, and we continue on our way. Also, we get a counterattack, which is once again amazing. But if you're bringing him just in general content, Guardian, Regeneration, Immortal, things that heal him, things that help him sustain, especially if you're using Bulwark, is going to be a huge help for this champion. We don't have the Head of Torment, unfortunately, but I'll show you guys an example in the video that I did earlier that actually shows him interacting with the Head of Torment and those fears consistently. Here you go. You can see him working down all those poisons. The poisons aren't super threatening, but they are pretty annoying, okay? So you can see whenever he gets hit, he's going to start cleansing some poisons, okay? We remove 2 poisons, one from Nekmo and one from Kantra, and then he gets hit again, removing some more debuffs. You can just see he's consistently removing those debuffs across the board throughout the match. All that, the counterattack staying up all the time. Pretty daggone sweet. So let me turn our webcam back on. We'll pause this match, and then I want to show you guys a little bit of this video right here where it actually interacts with the Head of Torment. Like I said, we did the run earlier, and it worked well. So I don't want this video to go on too long. I want you guys to get the point. But here we go. So the Head of Torment, we're placing the fears out there. Obviously, it's going to slow the run down still. Okay, having those fears is definitely not a good thing whatsoever, but having the consistent possible answer is definitely very nice. So he just got feared. He didn't get to activate the actual counterattack there. I think you guys can see that, right? So once he does his actual attacks, that's when we'll see the fear actually get cleansed. So it's fallen off the champions, of course. Let's see if somebody actually hits him. It'd be a pretty good example. We're just waiting around, waiting around. There we go. Boom. He has his counterattack. He didn't actually cleanse anything there, unfortunately. Hopefully somebody else hits him with a good AoE ability. We could have cleansed the provoke, which would have been amazing. Okay. Didn't cleanse anything there. So obviously 60%, sometimes it happens frequently and sometimes it just doesn't happen. So it is all RNG, of course. So there we go. Boom. We cleansed both of those true fears from Husk as well as from Ugo. Counterattacks again. He can cleanse a fear from himself as well, which is definitely very sweet. But he can also get the true fear activated on himself and not actually be able to do a counterattack whatsoever. Then we have Ugo with a few extra cleanses as well. Boom. He's cleansing some of the poisons. Just some consistent cleanses throughout the board. So there you go. You guys can see it's not going to be a consistent true fear cleanse, but especially if you don't have a champion like Inquisitor Shamel, a champion who can actually be an answer for those true fears, or maybe you want to run him alongside Rector Drath. Extend those perfect veils, or Duchess, extend those perfect veils, remove some true fears whenever the perfect veil is not up and the true fear actually gets placed. It's definitely a viable option to do. Bring this champion alongside those, and you're definitely going to have an easier time when it comes to Hydra. There you go. He's cleansing more true fears, continuously cleansing debuffs. True fears, decrease attacks, whatever it may be, poisons, whatever it may be, he's going to be cleansing it. So there you go, guys. The champion, as far as if it's a champion worth it to invest in, I'd say 100% yes. He's actually, like I said, surprisingly good epic. So when it comes to if I'm going to pull for this champion during the guaranteed event, I would honestly like to. I got some pretty good options as far as Mischief tanks, but honestly, I think he's up there with some of the best. Consistent buffs on himself, impressive buffs, very good A1 ability. If you're looking for champions for Hydra, that can be good for even your lower level teams. Maybe it's not going to be in your best team. Maybe he's going to be in your second best team. I think he has a viable spot. I think he has an interesting enough kit to make it worth it. But as far as other areas of the game, I think it's going to be in time for us to actually see where else he can be useful. Things like the arena, not much. Campaign, ignore it. Iron Twins, I mean, he's going to do Iron Twin stuff, okay? If you need the buff extensions, if you need this stuff, he can do it. But I don't think he's going to do it necessarily any better than any other champion. So guys, let me know what you all think about that showcase of this champion. Hopefully you guys found it valuable. Hopefully you learned something from it. But with that said, thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next video.